Attorney Zac Bailey with the Marc Lopez Law Firm to talk a little bit about modifying a plea agreement. It's a question we get all the time. Someone will give us a call and say, hey, I'm on home detention, I'm on probation, I'm doing really well, but I don't like it. Is there any way I can switch up my plea and do something different? And in most instances, the answer is no, especially for misdemeanor or level 6 felony cases. If the plea is a set term plea agreement, meaning you agree up front to a sentence where no terms are open to the court, where it says you're going to do a year of probation, you're going to do 2 years of house arrest and then some probation, something like that. If all of those terms are explicitly laid out exactly what the plea will look like, then it is not eligible for modification. Now, there's an exception there if the prosecutor's office agrees to switch the terms of the plea agreement, but that is extremely rare. It's not something we often pursue because the prosecutor's office is not in the business of going back and undoing a deal that they've already made to give you a better plea. It's just not something that happens. So if you sign that plea for a year of probation, you will be doing that year of probation unless there's something in the plea that says you'd be eligible for early termination, something along those lines. So it's very important that you read over that plea agreement and know exactly what you're getting into because that's the sentence you're going to be serving. Before you go through that plea agreement, there's usually an advisement and a waiver of rights, where that advisement and waiver of rights will say something along the lines of, I understand that this plea is an agreement between myself and the prosecutor's office, and that the judge can either accept or reject the plea. They cannot make any changes to it. And that continues even, not just at that sentencing, but even afterwards. Even if you're doing great on probation, the judge doesn't have the authority to go back and change that plea offer. Think of it as a contract. Both sides reach an agreement. Both sides have to honor that contract. You can't go back and say, I'd like it to be a little bit easier now, just like the prosecutor's office can't come back and say, we're going to make this a little bit tougher on you now just because we don't think that was enough on the front end. So going into a set term plea agreement, a plea where everything is agreed upon, that's going to be the plea that you end up going through. So it is so important when a case is filed that you know exactly what you're getting into when you reach that plea agreement. Know going in that this is what it's going to be for the entire sentence. There's not something an attorney can do later on if it is that set term plea. So as you're talking to an attorney about it, make sure that you're comfortable with those terms because you have to live with them. So as you're reading over that plea, if it says 2 years of home detention, it's going to be 2 years of home detention. No matter how well you're doing, even if you don't like home detention, don't like your officer, anything like that, as long as it says set term, these are the terms, those will be the terms. Now, there are some exceptions if the plea is an open plea, meaning some terms are open to the court to decide. If it says there's a cap of 4 years or something along those lines, those terms, the judge decides. And so those terms might be eligible for modification. That's a totally different situation. So if you have a question about whether or not your plea is set term versus open, we can answer that for you. We can look into it. We don't typically handle modifications, but we can at least tell you if you are eligible for your plea agreement to be modified and send you along to someone we know can help you out. If you have a plea and want to know, is this something I would be able to modify down the line? We can answer that too. We can help you understand the terms of your plea agreement, but if it is a set term plea agreement, we need you to know that is not typically something that can be changed, again, unless the prosecutor's office agrees, but I don't want you to think that that's something that they typically do. It is extremely rare. It's not an avenue that's typically open. Again, they're not in the business of going back and making things easier for people just because they're doing better. That's sort of the purpose of the plea agreement is you go in knowing this is what it's going to be. This is going to be the outcome of my case. And you know that going forward that these are the terms you're going to have to achieve before your sentence is up. If you have any questions about this, give us a call at 317-632-3642. And remember, always plead the fifth.